Hi, it's Marie Fleming here from Awake with Passion, and welcome to today's video. Today's video is number 4 in the Sometimes Shit Happens video series. So today's video, I'm going to share with you another experience from my life and some of the stuff I learned. But today is kind of, it's a little bit related to the previous video, video number 3. So this goes back to, again, when I was younger and sort of around the time when I was 14. And I was in the care home, and I had some issues within my family, particularly with my dad. And so what happened was, basically, when I was 14, I was in a very vulnerable position. And like I said in the last video, I spent a few months in a children's home, in a care home. So around that time, what happened was that I got into this relationship, I'll say relationship like that, with somebody, with a man who was considerably older than I was. He would have been in his 30s at the time when I was 14. And I got into this relationship with him very, very young, in a very vulnerable position. And what ended up happening was we were involved, you know. So I went through my sort of teen years in this very dysfunctional, you know, relationship, we'll call it a relationship, situation. And it kind of became the norm for me to sort of be in this weird sort of setup. And to top it all off was that he was actually with somebody, and it was a member of my family. So he was obviously involved with them, and he was, you know, having this kind of whatever it was with me. And at the time when I was 14, you know, I believed it was love. I felt like I was in love. I felt like he was my everything. He was my whole entire world for that time. And you know, I used to. It was some really tough years there, because I used to feel like I was in love with this person who couldn't be with me. And I had all of these, you know, teenage hormones going everywhere. I had all of these, you know, feelings of love and all of the other usual stuff that happens when you're a teenager. And it was all very messed up in my head, you know. So on top of that, you know, I was in this kind of dysfunctional family environment anyway, and I was in care, you know, all of that stuff going on. So this was a really difficult time, and this relationship, this thing that I was involved in, it lasted and lasted and lasted for a number of reasons. One of them being that I felt very, very stuck. It was very difficult for me to get out of it, because they were it was my feelings, how I felt about him. Plus, there was some outside pressure put on me by this man in particular. And there was this thing kind of held over my head that if I get out of this relationship, what's going to happen? Is this person going to find out? Is it going to blow up my family? What's going to happen? You know, this terrible sort of feeling of being trapped. So this relationship kind of continued, and I sort of grew up in this very dysfunctional relationship. I now see what it was, because obviously looking at it now from adult eyes, that was highly inappropriate. You know, there's a lot of names you can put on there. I'm not going to talk about it now, but you know, it wasn't a healthy relationship, obviously. But what happened was, this lasted for a long, long time in my life. So it wasn't until I was actually about 23 years old when I was able to get myself out of this whole dysfunctional, awful situation, which was probably one of the worst things that I've had to deal with in my life. But what happened with this was that it was after sort of, we're talking like 9 years of this thing in my life, and this feeling of being trapped and feeling like I had done the worst thing in the world against this person that I loved in my family. I carried an enormous amount of guilt around with me for literally, yeah, you know, sort of until I hit about 33, 34, and I worked on all of this stuff. It was literally about 20 years of guilt that I carried with me. And with the guilt that I carried with me, it kind of, you know, massively had an impact on my life, because what I didn't realise until I got ill, so see video 1 where I talk about my illness, until I got ill and I had to work on all of the inside stuff, I didn't even realise how much I'd been carrying this guilt around with me. I didn't realise how much I literally hated myself, and how much I had been sabotaging my whole entire life, and believing that I didn't deserve any happiness and didn't deserve anything good to come into my life, you know. So the story that I was telling myself for all of those years was that because I was involved with this man who I thought I loved at the time when I was 14, as much as you can love somebody at 14, I was telling myself this story that I was this horrible, horrendous, disgusting person that had done this evil thing against this person in my family. And that was the story that I had been playing. I took full responsibility for this relationship that I was in. And I carried this story around with me. So what happened was, was that I had all this self-hate, literally all this self-hate. So what happened was when I started working on myself and I realised that it was underneath, when I worked on all this stuff, when I cleared out all this crap in my head, I released all the emotions and basically all the stuff that I talk about now. If you've seen any of my webinars or other videos, all the stuff that I talk about now is because that is what I have experienced, and I know what it feels like to hang on to some of this stuff. So when you release all this stuff, from your life, and you start changing the way you look at yourself, life can transform in such a huge way. And this is what happened to me. So it was when I let go of all of the guilt, all of the hard feelings that I'd been carrying around, like massive amount of baggage on my back that I'd been carrying for 20 years. Life really, really transformed, So one of the things that I talk about a lot in the work that I do, and you may have heard me talk about this before, is this whole area of self-love. So if you're somebody that's not loving yourself the way I used to never love myself, if you're somebody that is hanging on to this guilt, is hanging on to this old stuff, all of these old stories that you pick up along the way, and these old beliefs that we have about ourselves, if you're hanging on to all of this stuff, life is not going to feel very free for you. Life is going to feel like really, really difficult, really, really hard. And I understand because I've experienced it myself. So, one of the things I talk about so much is self-love. And it wasn't until a few things. I looked at the story I was telling myself and realised, I saw the truth in it, what it really was. I wasn't at fault. I was only 14 when this stuff happened. I was a vulnerable child, etc., etc. It wasn't until I saw the reality of it with the help of my coach and my therapist, and it wasn't until I worked on really releasing that shit that I'd been carrying around and really processing some of the stuff that had happened to me, and really forgave myself for the things that I had been holding on to. It wasn't until those things happened that my life really, really transformed amazingly. And then on top of that, it was learning to really love myself. So I talked about that in the last video, if you might have seen that, but I talk about it a lot, and I make jokes about it, how much I bloody love myself now. But it's because I've done all that work, and it's because, I've really realised what happens when you don't love yourself and when you really hate yourself and you carry the guilt and you carry all this baggage from the past. You end up sabotaging your own happiness. You can end up believing in a really deep level that you don't deserve good stuff. You really believe that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, and you believe that you shouldn't be happy and you shouldn't prosper and you shouldn't have good relationships and you don't deserve to be happy. So this is so important. So this is why I suppose what I'm talking about today has informed my life so much, to such a deep level, which is why I talk about self-love and self-care so much, because like I said, I know what it's like to be on the flip side of that. So if you're somebody out there that's watching this and you are carrying stuff around with you, or maybe you haven't forgiven yourself for things, whether or not you've done them or not, even if you have done some terrible, truly awful things, or maybe they're just stories that you think you have, it doesn't matter, because the end result is the same. You can forgive yourself and you can let this stuff go. And when you do that, life feels better. You can breathe. You can relax in your own skin. You can see the beauty in you that you really, really do have. And it's not clouded by all this bullshit, all this crap, all these stories and all this old negative history that you carry around. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And again, it's not something I've spoken about openly. And this is important. It's so important. So like I always say, shit happens in your life. Sometimes some of this shit really sticks and you carry it with you for years and years and years. But no matter what your situation is, there are always ways to be able to work through it, to be able to release those emotions, release that baggage, You know, clear your mind, create your identity all over again, forgive yourself, love yourself, and look after yourself, and cherish yourself, cherish your life, you know, and really value yourself, which is the most important thing that you can do, I believe. So that's today's video. If you found some value from it or you liked it, please give it a like. It's always nice to know. Feel free to share this with anybody that you think might benefit. And just remember how amazing you are, no matter what's happened in the past, you know, what you think you've done, what you believed you've done or haven't done. There's always time to start anew. You can always start again and clear some of this stuff out. So I hope you found that useful. You know, and one more point I'd say is that no matter what's happened to you, heavy stuff, it doesn't stop you from living an amazing, passionate life full of joy. I promise you, because the way I feel now in life is so different to the way I used to feel growing up and through my 20s, you know, even the early 30s, it was difficult. But now, you know, where I am now, it feels so much more free. So like I always say, if I can do that, you can as well. I'm no better than you. So bear that in mind, okay? So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will speak to you very shortly on the next video, where again I'll be talking about some of the shit that's happened to me and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So until then, take care, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.